This is the General Post Office in Dublin, Ireland. Today, it's a place where Dubliners can deliver and receive their mail. But a century ago, it was a backdrop for a bloody insurrection that marked the start of the country's 20th century armed struggle for independence. On April 24, 1916, at around 11:55 a.m., the GPO was seized by Irish volunteers and the citizen army. An hour later, a schoolteacher named Patrick Pearse appeared in front of the building and for the first time ever proclaimed the establishment of an independent Irish republic, free of the English. This is a story that has been retold in history textbooks, television, and literature, ingraining itself into Ireland's historical consciousness. Popular history emphasizes the heroism of rebel leaders like James Connolly and Patrick Pearse, who tragically lost their lives in the revolutionary struggle. However, these men were not the only ones who risked their lives for independence. This is the story of two women who have gone almost unnoticed in the history of the Rising. While it's true they played a quieter role, their story is compelling because it's not only about revolution, it's also about queer love. In 1914, this hotel behind us was the meeting place for Cumann na mBan, the Irish Women's League. This was a women's paramilitary organization that was formed to aid the Irish nationalists in the struggle for independence. During one of their meetings, Kathleen Lynn, a doctor from the west of Ireland, County Mayo, was giving a demonstration on first aid. It's there she met the lively socialist suffragette Madeline Ffrench-Mullen. It is said that while the group was socializing afterwards, Madeline fell off her chair from laughter and Kathleen helped her up, sparking a lifelong friendship. Some historians dismiss the queerness of Kathleen and Madeline's relationship. After all, they lived together for decades, yet Kathleen never explicitly described it as romantic. But is it really fair or even accurate to take historical sources at face value without considering the context in which they are written? From what I've learned as a history student, every document, poem, or diary entry reflects not only the facts, but the writer's biases and the society in which they lived in. One of the most fascinating parts of studying history is reading between the lines to understand what's left unsaid. But how do we do that? Well, historians aren't mind readers, but we're pretty damn good at piecing together puzzles. And the first piece we look for is the writer's audience. Most of the information that we have about this couple comes from Kathleen's personal diary. So it may seem weird to consider the quote-unquote audience that she's writing for. But not all diaries are secretive or confessional. In fact, Kathleen's diary was probably meant to be read. Her very first entry begins with, quote, Easter Monday, Revolution. This is St. Stephen's Green. During the Rising, a garrison was established here by Michael Maline and his second-in-command, Kostas Markovits. Under them, Madeline worked as a lieutenant for the ICA, the Citizen Army, where she oversaw medical operations and logistics. Just 1 kilometer away, in City Hall, Kathleen was a chief medical officer under Sean Connolly. When he was shot, she took over as the senior official in his place.
Unfortunately, despite their best efforts, the rising was quickly overwhelmed by the British military, forcing the rebels into an unconditional surrender that Kathleen herself was forced to present.
When documenting her revolutionary activity, she keeps each entry short and rarely discussed private feelings or intimate matters. Thus, she has no reason to write extensively about her relationship with Ffrench-Mullen because, number one, it wasn't relevant to her political actions, and number two, her words could be used against her. I mean, according to the standards of their society, their relationship was already risky. It was unconventional, even radical, for two women to remain unmarried, much less share a life together. Thus, like many queer figures in history, she used coded language when writing about her relationship. Her love for Madeline is written into her love for mutual aid, independence, and healthcare. When you read between the lines, it's actually quite romantic. But what does all of this have to do with Irish independence? What does somebody's private sexual preferences have anything to do with the public anti-colonial struggle? The answer lies in the fact that imperialism doesn't just affect broad structures like politics and the economy. It fundamentally affects the way that individuals interact with one another. Under imperialist occupation, private becomes public. Your interpersonal relationships become a site of control. This is an ongoing issue that isn't unique to Ireland and is still used in modern colonial projects. For example, the Israeli government uses Grindr to obtain blackmail from queer Palestinians to get intelligence from resistance groups. This is the same Israel that claims to be a paradise for the queer community, a tactic known as pinkwashing, where governments distract from their human rights abuses with LGBTQ-friendly imagery. Throughout the centuries that Ireland was under colonial occupation, England imposed laws that restricted their sexuality. In 1366, the Statutes of Kilkenny forbade intermarriage between the natives and the settlers. From 1691 to 1778, the penal law forbade Catholics from marrying Protestants. Whenever a political threat emerged, sexuality was a means of suppressing it. Before English conquest, Irish society had a very different view of same-sex love. Their law permitted homosexuality, and their mythology featured characters with fluid gender identities and same-sex bonds. It wasn't until 1861, when England was on their Victorian morality crusade throughout their colonies, that homosexuality was officially criminalized in Ireland. According to Duty Ailawadi, a feminist researcher activist based in Gujarat, quote, "There emerges an underlying relationship between sexuality and power. Power, with regards to sexuality, were in the hands of two people, namely the man whom the woman is attached, who controlled the sexual activity of the wife, and the transgressors, who by transgressing was upsetting the law, and in doing so anticipate freedom." In other words, the power of heteronormativity is threatened when heterosexual law itself is transgressed. Under occupation, the Irish body was never a private matter. It was constantly being policed by the norms and needs of the empire. Metaphorically, the British Empire acted as a sort of panopticon. Guards at the center of this prison can see every inmate, but you can't quite see them. You are constantly being surveilled, so you are constantly performing. Nothing, even your sexuality, can be personal.
On May 1st, 1916, Kathleen was taken to Kilmainham Jail.
The Bastille of Irish nationalism. Today, a place of remembrance, but for generations a symbol of oppression and tyranny.
This panopticon-esque building was established under English colonial rule in 1796.
for the purpose of punishing anyone from petty criminals to rebel leaders. While most inmates were detained, some were made martyrs, fueling Irish nationalism and the struggle for independence.
We know about Kathleen's experience here from her diary entries. On her first night, she shared a tiny one-bedroom cell with two of her comrades. The conditions were abhorrent, and she was fed gruel and dog biscuits for supper. But when Madeline joined her the next day, she happily endured these conditions.
Her partner's presence provided her with a sense of revolutionary optimism that few else could. When moved away from Madeline, she writes that the new facility was, quote, clean and comfortable, but I'd give £10,000 for Kilmainham and Madeline.
In those 2 to 3 weeks spent without her partner, she hardly produced any diary entries. This was a silence that spoke volumes. Without Madeline, Kathleen's revolutionary flames were dimmed. Luckily, the two were released within the year and remained politically active. From 1918 onwards, Kathleen became increasingly concerned with Ireland's healthcare crisis, especially regarding infant care. Hospitals were overcrowded and children were dying of preventable diseases at devastating numbers. This sparked the pair of them to co-found St. Ultan's Children's Hospital, which used to exist right over here from 1919 to 1984. This was testament to their political and romantic bond. Despite England's successful divide-and-conquer strategy, which resulted in the Irish Civil War of the 1920s, the two of them remained faithful to each other and to the cause of Irish liberation.
Kathleen and Madeline's relationship was especially transgressive. Their relationship was not just a personal issue. It was an active form of resistance. Their refusal to enter heterosexual relationships was powerful not only because it challenged gender norms, but also because they were able to create a revolutionary infrastructure that uplifted Ireland's most vulnerable. Through their loyalty to each other and the cause, these women founded the first hospital in Ireland that specialized in infant care. In my opinion, their clinic was as much a site of resistance as the IRA headquarters themselves. The pair exclusively employed female doctors, providing jobs to a discriminated population who were empowered to achieve great things. For example, one of these women, Dorothy Stopford Price, introduced a vaccine that prevented tuberculosis, making their hospital the first in the Isles to use it. This was huge because TB was a major cause of death in this time period, and Ireland was a colonized nation that was having their resources exploited. It should come to no one's surprise that when medical professionals are open to both sexes, innovation is more common. In the clinic, Kathleen patiently gave lessons to young Irish mothers. She also opened the first ward in the world that utilized a child-centric approach to early education. The lack of a domineering patriarch or husband allowed them to pursue projects that ended up saving the lives of children and provided careers to women.
On May 26, 1944, Madeline tragically passed of illness and was buried right here in Glasnevin Cemetery alongside her comrades. After looking at her beloved one last time, Kathleen wrote, quote,
"Saw my darling Madeline surrounded with lovely flowers and looking so serenely happy."
Once the funeral processions were over, Kathleen was in a pit of despair. She found herself unconsciously walking through Clyde Road on a route that the two would take together. In her diary, she wrote, "Madeline belonged to me."
Now, some nationalist historians look down on the queer history of independence. They say that it's an unrelated issue and irrelevant to the subject. But really, they get upset because it doesn't fit into their hyper-masculinized vision of Irishness. This is pretty common in colonial history. You see, the colonizer feminizes its subjects as a means of stripping their power. Women are seen as weak, so the Irish people are considered feminine. In turn, the colonized creates hyper-masculinized narratives of history as a form of resistance by turning this misogynistic view of nationhood around itself. They focus on the militant masculinity of Irish men and tokenize Irish women. This leads to a limited view of history that lends itself well to conservative politicians who want to create colonial dynamics, but within the island itself. While Kathleen and Madeline's story is less inflammatory, their achievements in healthcare and unconventional romance are just as powerful. Queering Irish history doesn't weaken anything. It doesn't weaken independence or national spirit. It simply expands our understanding of history and unites a wider demographic. It also shows that revolution is also about mutual aid and isn't exclusively fought on the battlefield.
Has housing prices in Ireland rising by €100 a day.
That here in Northern Ireland, the sectarian tensions, the violence, they're not just in the past, they're very much in the present.
Today, Ireland is a nation with partial independence. In the north, workers face colonial neglect. In the south, neoliberal capitalism has replaced old-school imperialism. There is much left to be done, and history plays a large part on how workers move forward. The nationalist perspective has served its time. Queering Easter Rising can contribute to an understanding of history that acknowledges the complicated web of power that maintains imperialism. It can provide unity to marginalized communities, not only in Ireland, but in colonized nations throughout the world. The Israeli state weaponizes LGBT aesthetics to deflect from their violent settler colonialism. They wave a rainbow banner when dropping bombs on refugee camps that likely house queer Palestinians. Understanding the intersection of anti-colonialism and queer liberation can fight against this pinkwashing that Israel uses to justify their occupation of Palestine. In the end, we aren't just connected by our national or sexual identities. We are connected by our shared material conditions. And if a queer history can teach us anything, it's that liberation is not individualistic. It's a collective struggle. Thank you guys so much for watching my video. As always, thank you to my lovely patrons who made this video possible. I hope you guys enjoyed this documentary style video. I had the privilege of going to Ireland this summer, and I was like, why not film a video there? I love Irish history, especially when it's queer. And thank you, special shout out to the tour guide of Kilmainham Gal, Connor. If you're watching this, maybe you're watching this, I don't know. They gave a very good socialist analysis of Easter Rising. Yeah, that's my goat. And yeah, I hope you guys have a lovely rest of your summer. Bye bye, guys.
Okay, there we go.
How's the lighting? Terrible?
Bad?
During the Rising, a garrison was established here by... that was meant to support the Irish nationalists in their struggle for independence.